Today we're going to be talking about CBD and anxiety. Let's get a good grounding here. What do we mean when we hear the word anxiety? I feel like it's a phrase that I'm hearing a lot more, particularly from young people who I think have a
Mhm.
lot more flexibility with using language to describe different emotions than my
Yeah.
generation does. Talk to us about your understanding of what anxiety actually is, so that we can think about how CBD may or may not be able to be managed with it.
You know, it's interesting what you just said in terms of like this generation being able to describe this stuff, right? I'm
Mhm.
Generation X,
Yep.
and like the
Same.
idea of anxiety, I didn't know when I first started feeling it. I was like, I don't know what's up, but I feel mad nervous, right? I was like, and this I don't feel cool right now. I couldn't understand. I couldn't really express it. I was like, yo, I'm mad nervous, son. I don't know. I just like I feel out of sorts. That's the way I was describing it. I remember when I first got hit with anxiety because I was never a person that was like nervous or felt out of sorts, felt a lot of stress or worry.
Mm,
Um, and so when you start having these feelings of like being tense,
yeah.
being out of sorts, right? These are like lay people terms, being nervous,
Mm,
not feeling like yourself, being uncomfortable in your skin and
right.
not knowing like why specifically. That's what you would kind of associate with generalized anxiety disorder. Like,
Wow.
I don't know what's going on, but I don't feel right.
Mm.
My
You
heart's
know,
beating. Go ahead.
yeah, no, I think one of the things that's so interesting is that I don't know if you've seen any of these charts that describe have different types of emotions listed on them, and we all kind of know the basic emotions: happy, sad, angry, mad, joy. But there, I've seen printouts, and I've seen a number of educators starting to use these, and it'll literally have maybe 100 different words to describe different emotions, right? Because you realize there are so many more emotions than our basic language has the capacity to describe. And if you don't know these words, you might be experiencing something that you can't quite name. And hearing you talk about like the difference between Gen X and now, I think that maybe we just didn't have enough words, Dr. Damas, because I certainly do not remember anxiety being something that was like an emotion that we even recognize.
Yeah.
And like, I remember, like, if we were, my parents were very Christian. So if you
Yeah.
were feeling some fear, something fearful or whatever, they'd hit you with a Bible verse. The Lord has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and love and a sound mind. And I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna repeat that. And like, all right, that's fine. But like, I'm still feeling this thing, but I'm just gonna repeat these verses to help me figure it out. I just think maybe we just didn't have the language, because I see now my children are so much more articulate at what they are experiencing in terms of their emotional bodies, that it is insane to me. I'm like, what? I didn't have that language. Like, I'm learning from them how to better name the emotions I am feeling. I think Gen X, we missed out on a lot. It wasn't just being a latchkey kid. We was latchkey in everything.
We were using like one word to describe like eight different things, right? Or you like
Yes.
depending on how you use it, right? It was like, you know, people still laugh. My sons, I be like, yo, what up, son? And like, but I really mean son, not like my friend's son,
Right.
and not like disrespectful, like I'm sonning you.
Right.
Right. So we didn't have that. So it's like, yo, this, my man right there is mad nervous, son.
Right.
And it's he's he's overcome with anxiety. But
Wait, I
we
think, do you remember the Smurfs? I know we got to get to the serious part. Remember Smurfs and how the word Smurf could just be like a substitute for any other word? Oh,
yeah,
that's Smurf is surfing. I feel like we just did that with some language. We just kind of like took some
yeah,
generic terms. We had like three or four phrases, and that just meant everything.
exactly,
We've
right.
Smurfified our language.
And you know what that did for us, right? It didn't allow us to really uh, process what was going on with us,
Mm,
right? We didn't process because
yeah.
we couldn't define it, right?
Yeah.
We didn't have
Yeah.
or the tools or the ability to kind of work through it. And
Wow.
so when you get away from the generalized anxiety disorder, you can have specific anxiety disorders, like you can
Mm,
have social phobias.
wow.
Growing up in Flatbush, in the real talk, growing up in Flatbush, I still have a thing when I'm in places where there's lots of people, just because of what's happened. Like when I was a kid, it was like y'all go somewhere, yeah, yo, there's too many people in here.
Wow.
Like
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
like the way that dude right there looks. I'm going to have to bounce. I don't feel comfortable. Just
Mm.
because things used to jump off all the time where I
Yeah.
grew up, the way I grew up, right? So you can have that. You can have panic disorder, which is like, you get really scared, and that could be associated with things like PTSD. You had an event
Wow.
in your life, and people, everyone knows you're Black, growing up in America, you're going to have some sort of PTSD.
That's
But
right.
there's also, PTSD from, military veterans suffer a lot from that. Women from domestic abuse, traumatic births, uh,
Mm.
things that we've seen, healthcare workers who've, ED, trauma workers, and things like that. And so you can have things that are associated with specific events or thoughts and those type of things.
Wow.
All of those basically mean that there are thoughts, feelings, emotions that are affecting the way that you perceive and interact with the world that you're not able to control. And
Mm.
they can, again, manifest themselves psychologically, emotionally, as well as physically. So you can have the manifestation of anxiety as palpitations. My
Wow.
heart is beating fast. I'm
Mm.
sweating. My hands are clammy. Or my knees are weak. Yo,
Right. Right.
he's mad weak in the knees, son. You can say that, right? Right? I feel faint, right? And that's a vasoconstrictor. That's like a decrease, shallow breathing, rapid breathing, decrease in blood flow to the brain. Oh, you're passed out. And
Wow.
so, anxiety can run a spectrum, and it has a spectrum of disorders.
Huh. And I just want to point out that none of these, wherever you end up on the spectrum of disorders for anxiety, none of them should involve shame. Right, because Dr. Damas, as you said, growing up in America, you're gonna have some anxiety.
Yeah.
But just growing up, and that definitely you're gonna have some anxiety coming from our community. But frankly, thinking about the latest in mass shootings, and then
Yeah.
thinking about all of the things that we are exposed to in terms of potential harms here, it's going to be difficult to grow up in a society like ours and not have some sense of anxiety. So I don't want people to feel a sense of shame about that. That's also very particularly a statement aimed at our Gen Xers and older, because we don't have that language facility that we talked about at the very beginning that some of
Mhm.
our kids do. It's important for us to recognize that these emotions, and we've been talking a lot about emotional regulation, these emotions are there to indicate something. They're a sign of something, not to be ignored, not to be smushed down. And I just want to make sure that people are aware, regardless of how anxiety may or may not be showing up in your life, shame is not something that we want to attach to this. So I don't know if you have any thoughts about that in particular, Doc.
No, you know what I've learned to the way I've learned to kind of associate it instead of it being seen as like a bad thing. Because again, when I first started experiencing it, I remember I was in medical school when this first started happening to me, and walking into the hospital in the room, just be like, what is this that
Mm.
I'm feeling right now? This is whack. Why am I so nervous? I don't even understand it. And
Wow.
what I try to tell people now is like, consider it if you've ever watched superhero movies like Spider-Man, and he's got his spidey sense. Whenever
Mm.
something was off in the environment around someone's going on, he'd be like, "Hey, my spider sense is tingling." Now he didn't know what it was, right?
Right.
He didn't know if it was like, a Doctor Octopus is gonna attack, or some old lady was gonna get into an accident, but he felt it, that
Yeah.
something was off around him, and that he needed to prepare himself for some sort of action. And
Mm.
I like to say, like, hey, think about it that way. It's your body, the numerous interactive systems in your body telling you that there's something going on that you need to
Mm.
pay attention. Now we need to find out what that is,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so that we can start seeing what that is. Maybe it's good information. Maybe it's bad information, right? Maybe it's a combination, but being able to get in tune with that as opposed to rejecting it and saying this is a bad thing. There's a reason why you're feeling this way.
I like the spidey senses because people think, Spider-Man's a superhero. So
Yeah.
that already is going to make it, if we can elevate it to superhero status, your
Yeah.
emotions are your spidey senses. That's good. Well, yeah, I'm going to use that. I'll let people know Dr. Damas gave me this great
Yes,
analogy,
God, give me
spidey
my
senses.
propers. Give
Yes.
me my propers.
So, all right. So we've got these spidey senses. We've got anxiety as sort of something that we now better understand. Is this something that it's impacting a whole lot of people? Is it just those of us who happen to be melanated people? Like, who is experiencing anxiety based on the numbers and the demographics?
Interesting thing enough about it's very prevalent in society at some point or another. You can find up to about 40 million people in the US, right? And we're talking about,
Wow.
adults. So
Yeah.
what are there, like 300 million people in the US, but
Yeah,
like half of that are
330 or
kids,
something like that,
right?
330
But
million. Black people make up 44 million or so. So that's like damn near all the black people if we were just saying.
just got
I mean, I know
anxiety.
you said it's not just us, but that's a huge number.
That's a huge swath of people have some sort of
Wow.
anxiety disorder at some point. And then within that, there are specific demographic differences. Women make up the largest number percentage of people that experience anxiety with about 20 to 25% of them, right? Which is lower in men. Men say they experience about 15%, but we got to keep in mind that these are self-reported things, right? And so
Right.
we know a couple of things about men tend to, especially when it comes to mental health disorders and things like that. There's the stoicism and the stigma of admitting that there's something wrong. So a lot
Right.
of people say the numbers overall, both women and men, are underreported, but specifically in men. But we have to go with what we have, right?
Yeah.
And then, as we talked about earlier, when it comes to the racial gap, brothers and sisters, we experience anxiety at a higher rate
Mm.
than everyone else. More specifically, extreme or severe anxiety, which
Wow.
means the kind of anxiety where you start to have physical manifestations, effects on your health,
Mm.
sleep disturbances, performance, and even emotional outbursts as a result. So we're
Wow.
talking about the kind of because anxiety, if poorly managed, can result in a lot of other things. It can be really, really bad, not only for your psychological health, but your physical health, your emotional
Mm.
health, the health of the people around you, your financial health. Like it can start to wear people down because you
Yeah.
can't control it,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
what is going on? Yeah. So it is.
As I'm listening to you talk, I'm reminded that, we've been learning this year about how depression in Black women shows up as irritability and it shows up in men as sort of aggression or what we would define as aggressive behavior. But thinking about, the example you just gave, if there's an outburst, we often see it, oh, he's so angry and violent. Oh, maybe the brother's anxious.
Your brother's
The
mad
brother's going through
nervous.
something.
Yeah.
He's like, he's got the
Yeah.
concerns, valid concerns that if he had the language and the time and the environment where he felt safe enough communicating that, it might not come out in an explosion. But we are learning more about the ways that these different emotions manifest, and I'm beginning to really believe that a lot of what we have identified as just angry Black fill in the blank is sort of like the Smurf, right? We're using
Yeah.
that trope to sort of excuse and dismiss the validity of those emotions. And if we all do that, including those of us within the community, instead of providing ourselves with the language and the capacity to talk these things out, then what really might show up as violence might be hurt, might be
Yeah.
shame, might be anxiety. So I thank you
Fear.
for breaking
Yeah.
that down. Yeah, or fear. Yeah, exactly, exactly. All
Yeah,
right.
good stuff. So if we use like the Spider-Man, the Spider Sense thing,
Mm-hmm.
imagine in that scenario that every time Spider-Man's Spidey sense went off, he put his hands up and got ready to fight, right? And was ready to fight. Then
That's
you'd be
right.
like, what's up with this dude? He's ready to fight all the time. And he's like, I'm feeling this thing. But that doesn't necessarily, like I said, in the stories, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's in danger because
Ooh,
it could be telling him that his spider sense was like, there's something going on.
right,
Somebody else may be in danger, but he can't
right.
perceive why he's feeling, can't interpret it. So if he's always like, oh, something's up and my dukes are up and I'm ready to scrap, because I feel awkward, then you would say, this person's angry. This person hasn't processed these feelings and these sensations well. They don't know how to express or, kind of deal with them.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for breaking that down. I know we're going to talk about CBD, but there's so much that
Yeah.
underlies what
Yeah.
might inspire someone to consider using CBD. So one of the things I appreciate is that because you're not just somebody who engages in CBD, you are a whole real doctor.
Yeah.
I think this background is really helpful. So let's talk about CBD. What, if anything, how can it impact anxiety? Are you finding that your patients are incorporating CBD in their overall health practices for anxiety? Give us the inside scoop, Doc.
So the great thing, again, using my personal experience, right? Because that's how I got started in all of these looking for. So I started having these feelings, and I was like, and I went to see somebody, like, because I was like, something is wrong here. I don't know what it is, right? But this ain't right. I'm not a nervous dude. I don't walk into rooms and feel overwhelmed like I can't. Something's wrong. And so
Mm,
I wound up going to a bunch of physicians, having a bunch of tests, try to figure what this thing was. And I wound up getting a prescription for Xanax,
hmm.
which is a benzodiazepine. It's a class of medications which are anxiolytics, meaning they bring down your anxiety. It didn't work for me. It actually made things worse for me. It made me
Oh,
like a
wow.
zombie. I did not like that. I could not get a dose of that
Huh.
thing that was appropriate for me. Made me really groggy and sluggish. So it was like I wasn't nervous anymore, but I couldn't function. I was kind of like in a
Right.
stupor, in a fog.
Yeah.
Um, and those drugs work on neurotransmitters, chemicals that your body produces, specifically in your brain, because that's where the largest uh, bundle of neurons are. And
Mm.
so it produces, and then these neurotransmitters do different things with you. Benzodiazepines and alcohol specifically work on this neurotransmitter called GABA, GABA, and it's an inhibitory neurotransmitter. Basically, it just brings the level of everything down. And
Wow.
so if you think about how alcohol, somebody who drinks a lot of alcohol, they start to get drunk, and then, like, they start slurring their speech, and the more of it, they can pass out drunk, pass out. That's the way it kind of works. It slowly starts bringing down your stimulation, right? And
Mm.
so in small amounts, it takes the edge off, right? So some people drink to take the edge off. That's literally drinking to
Wow.
manage your anxiety, right?
Wow.
And so,
Something we just normalize and just take the edge off. What does that mean? What emotion is that?
yeah, just
What
like,
does
yeah,
that mean? How do we wow, okay.
yeah.
That makes
I need
sense.
to take the edge off, right? You get a
Yeah.
drink to take the edge off because alcohol works on that neurotransmitter. And so
Mm.
do these benzodiazepines. Well, curiously enough, so does CBD and so does THC, but
Wow.
CBD has a higher affinity for the receptors without some of the pitfalls for that. So CBD works directly on this neurotransmitter that chills you out, and it doesn't give you the risk of overdose like alcohol can, like these benzodiazepines
Mm.
can, and it doesn't give you the risk of addiction or dependency.
Wow.
Um,
So it
yeah, so
feels
that's it.
like, that's 10 times better than taking the edge off with the
Yeah,
with much
Ben,
I'm just saying. I'm just
yeah.
saying.
And so I really, when I talk to patients and they tell me some of it, we just had a veteran in earlier, and he's like, man, I'm on Ativan and they got me on this dose, and I got it like it's overwhelming me.
Mhm.
And I'm like, bro, I know where you're coming from, because I've been in that situation where, fortunately for me, it was early on. I knew it didn't work for me, as
Right.
opposed to like you, where this is now 3, 4, 5 years of this stuff, and you're like,
Wow.
this sucks. And I don't have another option.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that these things do is they have higher rates of desensitization. So the more you use them, so these pharmaceuticals, the more you use them, the more tolerance, the higher the dosage you
Mm.
need. And then you can't just stop them, right? So you have to wean yourself off, because if you stop, when
Mhm.
you get to certain dosages, you'll stop, and then you'll wind up with, for example, seizures, withdrawals from these things. So you got to be real. So yeah, these are
Is
the
that why
pharmaceuticals.
when you hear the commercials for like, XYZ drug and it's got like 11 different symptoms
Yeah.
that you don't even pay attention to because they're showing you people dancing and laughing
Yeah.
and doing the thing that you can't do without the drug. And then I will sometimes hear them say, do not stop taking, once you start, do not stop taking it unless you have
Yeah.
consulted with a doctor. So I'm assuming this is why, because
Correct.
stopping it might be more dangerous than
Yeah.
keeping it,
Because,
depending on
yeah,
the danger. Wow.
correct.
Wow.
Yeah, so you got to be real careful with these things. And the other thing too, the great thing is that we're not introducing something new into your body. So when
Mm,
you use these cannabinoids, specifically CBD, you're not adding more dopamine, you're not adding more serotonin, you're not doing any of that, right? What you're literally doing is allowing what your body naturally produces to hang out in the system a little
wow.
longer instead of being broken down and recycled.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you're allowing stimulation of the receptors at a level that doesn't overwhelm them so that you don't get desensitized so quickly, or it's not so easy for you to become addicted because your receptors have been fired up and they're like, where's that stuff you always give us? Where's
Right.
that stuff? Right?
Give
And
me
so
the Smurf.
yeah. Smurf, where's the Smurf?
Right.
Smurf.
I need a Smurf. I'm feeling Smurfy right now. Give me my Smurf.
I'd be like, yo, my man is mad Smurfy over there. What's
Somebody better Smurf that brother up. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. We're gonna be focused. We're gonna be
all
focused.
right?
I couldn't let it go. I couldn't let it go. Oh, all right. So then it sounds as though the CBD is going to be something that's going to be able to
Yeah.
at least provide an alternative that will not come with all of those other side effects and other things.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
the side effects of a lot of those things are one of the reasons that people don't like those.
Right.
Men, for example, this is where we're talking about men. One of the primary reasons is that men do not adhere to their medication regimen, whatever it is sexual dysfunction, right? So you
Mhm.
start taking these medications, you lose your libido, you lose your ability to obtain or maintain an erection, and dudes are like, no, right? So it could be
Yeah.
blood pressure medication, it could be glaucoma medication. What? If this stuff is messing up my action, I'd rather lose an eye.
Wow.
Like, I'd rather
Damn, not
lose
the
my
eye.
eyes. I'm not taking this glaucoma medication. So a lot of these pharmaceuticals that treat them like SSRIs, right? So we're looking at Seroquels, which is serotonin reuptake inhibitors, right? They can cause sexual dysfunction. It's not
Mm.
great. Yeah, I'm nervous, but now I can't do this thing that I really enjoy, which now has given me another problem because
So I'm
me,
feeling Smurfy, and now I can't even
it's
Smurf it
Smurf.
out.
I can't even Smurf. You know what I'm saying?
Damn.
This is making me feel even Smurfier. All right.
I got it. That's a
So
place nobody wants to be in. I don't think.
yeah. Yeah.
Which is crazy. Well, no, I'll save that for later. I was going to make it another joke. Let's be serious. We're gonna focus. Focus.
No, 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 no. We are having a great time. No, but the funny thing is, it's a real thing, right? So I'm looking
Yeah.
for a solution. You give me the solution, and now it gives me another problem. Now
Mm,
there's another problem which I didn't want in the first place, and I don't know, like, do I have to choose between one or the other?
right.
Right, right.
Right.
That's a
Right.
decision I didn't think I was going to have to make going into this. And is that problem now, am I sure it's related to this, or is it like by itself, or is this like, man, now I got two problems,
Right.
and so that can exacerbate that situation, and people,
Wow.
it's a legit thing. And
Yeah.
the other thing is, we have over time, because of, and we've talked about this a lot, because of cannabis prohibition, our knowledge of this stuff
Mm,
is really limited, and so
right.
we've only known weed, marijuana, THC containing products as our only source of this kind of stuff. So you
Wow.
hear that number one reason that adolescents, if you ask them why are you smoking weed, it's like, this is the only way that I can manage the stress.
Mm. All
And what
right.
are we
So
talking about? The
now
words
this
that people use to describe anxiety, stress.
right. Right. No, this makes a lot of sense. And we're going to stop here and go into commercial break. On the other side of it, I want us to talk about, this notion of being able to incorporate CBD or THC, depending on which, and you'll give us some insight about to manage the Smurf problem, right? To manage this
Yeah.
anxiety, which is also really interesting because a few weeks ago, the Wall Street Journal had come out with an article that said smoking marijuana doesn't seem to support people with anxiety. And then we've had, some experts on, like Dashida Dawson, who said, it was so curiously written. That article clearly was written by someone who doesn't understand the science, right? So they were speaking in very broad terms. They didn't understand the difference. And she noted that the article didn't reference the study didn't reference CBD, and the way that they incorporated the study was just not done well. So we're going to pause here, and on the other side of the break, I want you to talk with us about CBD, THC. These are two cannabinoids that, frankly, people are using in a variety of ways. We want to hear it from the expert. We're getting ready to head into commercial break. Much more to come on the Loree Daniel Favors Show. We'll be right back after this. Welcome back. You are listening to Loree Daniel Favors here in conversation with Dr. Herve Damas. He is here to help us understand how CBD and THC may impact what's happening for folks who are experiencing anxiety. And Doc, on the other side of the break, you were explaining just sort of the traditional ways that our society, our medical community, manages the stress of anxiety. We had a little bit of fun laughing about the inability to actually name some of these emotions. But I really wanted to get now into this understanding as to how CBD and THC may or may not be able to impact one's ability to healthily navigate feelings of anxiety. Talk with us about these two.
Yeah, so before we went on break, I had mentioned that people have been self-medicating, had an absence. There's been a void in knowledge of this kind of stuff, right? So
Mhm.
we only knew you smoke weed, it chills you out. Sometimes you see somebody really tense and acting up, and you're like, yo, you need to smoke some weed to chill out. Well, we know that. We've joked around. We know that you give people sometimes weed and they chill out.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have used it for that purpose. For that purpose,
Mhm.
and if you smoke enough of the weed, it can put you to sleep, right? And so that goes back to what we were talking about, the biochemistry of it, with that GABA receptor that chills you out and brings you down.
Mm.
So the THC sometimes though can do the opposite thing. It can
Wow.
make your mind start moving and make your mind start overworking, which can then exacerbate the anxiety to the point where you have paranoia,
I
right?
was just going to say, here comes the P word. I knew it was
Yeah.
coming.
So,
Allegedly.
yeah, you can have paranoia.
Mm.
You can have, like I mentioned, physical manifestations of that, where you have palpitations, you feel like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I'm really nervous. I think something's wrong with me. So you'll hear these episodes of people going to the emergency room, smoke some weed, and you go to the emergency room, they're like, yeah, bro, this is gonna cost you, drink some water, sit down over there. This is gonna cost you $4,000. We got that. Make sure
Smoke a
you pay
different strain next time.
make sure
Don't do
we
that one.
will be content. We will be collecting. So interesting thing is that you have these cannabinoid receptors in your brain, but you also have it in different parts of your body, including cardiac tissue. And so
Wow.
if you smoke weed trying to take down your anxiety, and you smoke the wrong strain of weed, or you have too much THC, it can make your anxiety worse. It can give you
Mm.
paranoia. It can also impact your cardiac tissue, where you start feeling these palpitations, because it's in
Wow.
there. And the combination of those two will make you feel even worse. And then you're like, I think I'm going to die right here.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah. And so
And
you get,
and that I'm
uh,
not joking about the different strain either, y'all. One of the things that Sheeta Dawson said was that, depending on the terpene, depending on
right,
the strain, if it is a sativa, depending on what it is, it might exacerbate, as you said, and depending on what it is, it might calm it down, and that might vary from person to person. So this is we weren't able to really tease out what the differentiation was in that conversation. So this is very helpful because I think it's going to help people to figure this out even more powerfully for themselves.
correct. But now when you consume CBD, which is, predominantly, comes from the hemp plant, and we've been talking about this a lot, the difference between marijuana and hemp, and the hemp plants have low THC in it. But anything that has low THC in it, now you're in a better position to get the result that you want.
Mm.
Why are you taking this gummy? Why are you, using this tincture? because I want to chill. Like I want to chill out, right? All right. So now I want to take this thing. Again, I don't want these side effects. Well, if it's pharmaceuticals, I don't want sexual dysfunction, or I don't want to be a zombie. I don't want to
Right.
be like, snowed out because I'm like zooted from these Xanaxes, right?
Mm.
But I don't want to smoke this weed over here, which is gonna make my mind race and go crazy. I just want to Smurf, right? Can I get something Smurfy, right? And so, the CBD allows you to get that sweet spot where, like, hey, man, I'm not gonna be high. I don't have to worry about paranoia or going on a bad trip. I don't have to worry about being snowed out like I am on these things. I don't have to worry about being addicted. I don't have to worry about, withdrawal, sudden withdrawal symptoms, anything like that. I can just get what I need and chill out and be happy with my life. I can still focus. My mind is still clear and I can function with my life. All I want to do is feel Smurfy. Can I get that? And yes,
Right.
this is
I want to
it.
feel Smurfy, and maybe I don't want to be high. Maybe I gotta go to work. Like I need to think, I need to focus, I need to be
Yeah,
clear. I don't want the high. I just want to manage this anxiety. So this is good. And when it comes to understanding the basics of CBD, one of the things you do really well is help us to understand that. How does one take CBD for anxiety? We know there's tinctures, capsules, edibles, vaping. What's the best method of ingesting CBD for anxiety? Is that also dependent on each person?
Yeah, it's depending on each person, personal preference, health history. I myself am not a smoker. I can't tolerate smoke. My lungs are like soft. I got little, mama man lungs. I can't handle. So I choke and cough, and it's unpleasant. So I like tinctures. I like edibles. That's my thing. But
Okay.
anything that you inhale, whether it's smoking it or vaping it, is going to be the fastest. So let's say
Huh.
you do have specific phobias, panic attacks, or things like that, where it's like, oh my God, my spider sense is going off. It's crazy right now. I need to bring this down. Smoking or vaping would be the fastest way to get it done because it hits your system, goes through your lungs, and it's in your system within about 2 minutes. You
Wow.
start feeling the effects, and it gets your peak bloodstream concentration about 20 minutes, but
Oh,
it's out
okay.
of your body the quickest. So
Okay.
within about 1 or 2 hours, depending on how much you smoke or vape, it's going to be out. So if you're someone who has generalized anxiety, all day type of thing, you're either going to be smoking or vaping regularly throughout the day to keep the edge off, right? Or you're
Mhm.
going to have to do something else. Another thing is if you've got like emphysema, any other kind of chronic
Right.
obstruction pulmonary disease, anything like that, smoking or vaping may not be the best thing for you,
Yeah.
right? So then you can go on to tinctures. Tinctures now are like the oil drops that you put under your tongue. You hold, the reason they work a little faster is they start the absorption in the skin under your tongue, in your mouth, because there's a bunch of blood vessels and that skin is very permeable. So absorption starts there. And so
Mm.
you'll start feeling the effects of that within about 30 minutes. So it's longer, well, 15 to 30, depending on the product.
Okay.
But, so it's not as quick as the smoking or vaping, but it lasts longer. So now
Right.
instead of it being out of your system in an hour or two, it can stay in there for 4 to 6 hours, right?
Okay. So if
So
somebody knows that this is like a day-long thing for them, like you're going to
yeah,
meet, you're going to do depositions, it's going to be, you might want
exactly.
to take a tink, something that's going to last longer so that you don't have to
Exactly.
constantly take a break and go
Yeah, go
re-up,
go there and
right?
vape. Oh yeah,
This, yeah. So being able to manage it more effectively, that's super helpful. That is super
exactly.
helpful. So,
And
in addition to CBD, because I know we only have just a minute or so left, in addition to CBD, now that we're aware that it can, in fact, be used to support navigating anxiety, is it something that I should be using as I'm doing yoga? Like, are there other things that I can do to make my body's receptivity to CBD that much more healthy? Or is it something that just in isolation and I can couch potato it out? What would you recommend in terms of
yeah,
being holistic?
yeah, so that's the big point about the whole thing is that we are complex and very multifactorial in terms of the things that we need and the things that we do. And so anytime that you're looking for solutions, the solutions should not be singular. They should have multiple ways that they can affect you and improve you and contribute to your betterment.
Hmm.
So So I would never recommend to look at CBD as a magic bullet. All right, that's it. And then
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
then we'd be doing the same thing with it, like we do with the pharmaceuticals. Here you
Right.
go. Here's your Xanax piece.
Yep.
And that's not how it works. And so things
It's a
like
smurfing.
mindfulness, yeah, it goes Smurf out, son. So things like mindfulness,
Mm.
meditation, yoga,
Yeah.
exercise, these things give you some tools and some control as well, which is another thing. If going back to my story, I was like, what is this? I don't feel in control of myself. How am I in this situation where I I don't feel like myself and I can't help it? Well, these practices take some of um, that pressure, that angst away.
Yeah.
So meditation has been, there's studies that show this. Meditation, yoga, and exercise help bring down our baseline levels of anxiety. In
Mm.
acute attacks, breathing exercises, mindfulness activities help bring it down. I Journaling helps. Identifying triggers helps
Yeah.
you as well.
Yeah.
And then you incorporate your CBD with that. And so now you have multiple options in your toolkit to make things happen for you.
I love it. This and so that again, this is one of the reasons I appreciate your approach to CBD as a medicinal. I've never heard you say he's got to get the Smurf. I'm gonna need you to get this product. This Smurf is gonna do the thing. It's always sort of couched within a very holistic approach to living and engaging, and I think that's one of the differences when you are in a CBD space that's not profit driven. That's not
Yeah.
I want to replace the Xanax with the this X so that you can. That's not the goal. The goal is to have more holistic, healthy lives. And this is an approach that, at least for me, is much more in alignment with how I'm trying to live.
Yeah.
CBD is something that I think a lot more people are now more open to, just because, and I'm not just going to say just because of this show. Obviously, the market is changing, the stigma levels are lessening. But I think folks like yourself coming on to help us continually have these conversations and flesh it out, really important for people to get grounded in what is going to be able to be, I hope, a useful tool for folks. So any final comments, anything we need to, any final takeaways we need
Yeah.
to just pull away as we head into our next commercial break?
So I would say this: if you're feeling these kind of feelings that you can't quantify, like kind of like we were discussing earlier, like, man, I don't know, I feel mad Smurfy, I feel nervous, I feel out of sorts, I'm not quite myself, right?
Mm.
That could be anxiety. If it happens specific times, places, they could be specific phobias. That's not uncommon. So there's nothing wrong with you, right? Like we said, about 40 million people in the US suffer from anxiety. African Americans, 20% more likely to suffer from severe anxiety, right? CBD can do and help replace some of your medications along with other things, and you can do it safely. It's not going to get you high. It's not going to give you the risk of like paranoia, like THC will, or sexual dysfunction like some other medications. There are very few drug interactions that put you at risk. Um, and, we have to consider our healthcare more like healing and less like a repair shop, right?
Yes. I
So,
like that.
I'm a healer. I am not a repairman. I am not here to like take out, swap out parts and send you out right here. I'm a
Right.
healer, and
Right.
healing involves the entirety of us and not
Mm,
just bits and pieces and then sending us off on our way. So
that's right.
I like to take care of people. Like you said, if anyone ever wants to call the office, they can always call us. It's 833-362-3262, 833-362-3262. We love speaking to you guys. And you guys already know, because it not only lets us give you information directly that you need, but it also gives us insight as to what your problems and what your needs are, what
Mm,
kind of things that we can do to help people out. Honestly, it
yeah.
helps us out big
Yeah.
time. And then you could go to the website, drdamas.com, drdamas.com, drdamas.com. You buy anything on the website, you got to put some Smurf on her name. Lurry, use the code Lurie, Lur. IE. We'll hook you up with a nice little discount and show some love for the person that allows us to have this platform and give us, this wonderful opportunity to connect and share wonderful information that makes our lives better.
Indeed, indeed. Dr. Herve Damas, we appreciate you, brother. Thank you for always bringing the Smurf. We appreciate it.
The crowd is smurfing.
They are smurfing for you, brother. They are smurfing. That is Dr. Herve Damas. Please make sure you follow him and give them a call. They are phenomenal folks. He's got a great team of people.